Howdy, Noah Road here. Waking up in the morning. I had a lovely morning wake up. I had a lovely night's sleep. And this is an example of my gripe that I have with like property owners and how they get litigious over somebody walking on their property or something, or somebody like me, you know, getting a night's sleep, or even if I'm sneaking on their property for over a week. Like I've been here for probably over 10 days, coming back at night and setting up my camp and then breaking it down in the morning and then stashing my big backpack and then taking my day pack, as we see there, into town. The gray bag has got a jug of water in it, and then that's the day pack that I use to walk around in. Things that I wouldn't want to lose if somebody ever found my big backpack that's stashed somewhere. But yeah, this is how I clean it. This is how I keep it. So this is an area that doesn't have homeless encampments and doesn't have any trouble with like the mentally ill that are all, starting up those camps that you see in like Kensington or in these bigger cities like Lexington or Louisville, Kentucky, or out west in California. There's no skid rows around here. This is just the middle of nowhere. So in places like that have those kind of problems, then the town or the community has been traumatized. You see what I mean? Traumatized against, every homeless person comes into town, they're automatically going to get to have their guard up, and they have reason because they're traumatized. But in this case, in a town like where I'm at now, and places that I go to, I believe that it should be, if a homeless person comes on a piece of property that isn't fenced in and it doesn't have a bunch of assets on it, and they're just coming in sneaking in the woods, and nobody would know any better if they were there or not, like this. I mean, I've been here for 10 days, and look, do you see any garbage? Is there any criminal activity going on here? Obviously, I just not. I mean, I come here at like 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, and then I go and get my backpack, which is stashed somewhere in the area, and I pull it up to here, and this is a good spot to lay out my tent. And I set up my tent, and I kind of make my bedroll in there and kind of make it cute and nice for me. And then I get a night's sleep. That's all I do. And then in the morning, like right now, it's like 7:20 in the morning, and I break it down, and I stash it in the woods, and then I go walk around the woods or do what I have to do, walk around town and do what I have to do in town for the day. You see? So I'm not causing any trouble, and this is not a community that has suffered any trauma from, homeless encampments. And if I was in one of those type of communities, I would realize, look, this is not the place for me. I'm a different quality of person. I'm a different caliber of person than that. So I go to these areas where there is no homeless encampments. There's very few people that are homeless in this whole county. There's some people that may be technically homeless, but there isn't people camping out, in these encampments. And you don't see people walking around in these, drug hazed stupors, and you don't see real serious homeless mental health issues. So, since this is an area like this, and if I just happen to sneak on a piece of property that isn't fenced off and doesn't have a bunch of assets on it, and it's just kind of in the middle of nowhere, and the guy's got a huge swath of land, he might come out here and walk on it once or twice a year. You see? Or maybe 10 times a year, But I've been here a lot, and I've never seen this guy walking around on this property, and it's a nice piece of property. Now, if I was causing trouble or something, or leaving, a mess, I could see somebody, getting a bit, uppity about it and litigious, using the law, as leverage to lean on me, But I think, things should be handled on a case by case basis in areas that hasn't been traumatized by homeless encampments. This is just proof. I'm just leaving this as a sort of record, you know, to show that I never trash properties. And, maybe most homeless people do. And I think if you are homeless, you got to be kind of, there's going to be some suspicion, and that's natural, you know. But let it be a case by case basis. And if you could prove yourself to be like this, and I don't have a record, I don't have a bunch of felonies on my, a history of felonies or nothing like that. I don't have any problems, with the law. I've been in the drunk tank a couple times in my early 20s. I probably got a simple assault from a fight, a mutual combative fight, maybe a time or two. I maybe got a little loud and mouthy with a cop once or twice. But this is back in my 20s, maybe once in my very early 30s, and now I'm in my almost in my late 50s. I mean, I've been a good boy for a long time, and I don't cause any trouble, and this is how I leave my camps, and this is a record of it. And I have a good heart, I really do. I don't mean no harm to anyone. And this is just why somebody like me, or me in particular anyway, this is the gripe that I have with greedy, litigious, pricky landowners, that would actually want to get me in trouble for just stealth camping, or people that just loathe me as a person for being a stealth camper who's homeless, who don't work a regular job and stuff like that. I don't get why there's such a problem if this is how I behave. I'm an individual, and I think you know, people's opinions, and when people's use of the law as leverage against somebody who might be homeless and passing through and traveling, camping on property, it should be handled on a case by case basis. And if this is how you leave your camp and you don't have a history of trouble with the law or any sort of unseemly records, and then I think the person should just be left alone, out of sight, out of mind. And if they don't leave a trace, what's the big deal? Certain times of the year, if it's in hunting season, like deer hunting season, then obviously, you know, that could be, I can understand, stay off my property during, from October till January or something like that. People being a little uppity because you'd be in the way of their hunting or something. But this guy doesn't even really have much hunting going on. I think one year I seen him set up a hunting perch in a tree. But other than that, the guy doesn't even really hardly come on this property. It's a pretty nice swath of land. It's not too far out of town. And, it's got houses kind of nearby. But there's nothing on here. No assets. There's no cottage. There's no garage. There's no tools or lawnmowers or, anything like that parked here on the property. It's just open. It's not fenced. It's not, doesn't have any signs that say no trespassing and stuff. Yeah, I think this is proof that, people can indeed, be should be, I don't know, give somebody like me the benefit of the doubt. Give me enough rope to hang myself, so to speak, and if this is how I leave my camp, out of sight, out of mind, I don't think anybody should use the law or even be able to use the law as leverage against me. I need to live. It's not my fault that I'm here in the world and I have a body. Our bodies require sleep. We need a little sanity and a little space of our own. And if I just sneak on some property and I'm just on the edge of it and there's no assets, I don't have to hop fences, and I'm not interrupting some kind of a hunting season deal. And it's just open swath, huge swath of land. It's just open and nobody's using it. The guy walks on it once or twice or 10 times a year. What's the big deal? As long as I'm not in a community that's been traumatized by these homeless encampments, if I stay away from those areas, you know, this is my record that I keep. I love how I live my life, you know. Anyways, I'm just saying hi and leaving this as a record. I hope it doesn't sound like I don't mean to sound entitled. I'm just saying, I do need the benefit of the doubt. And as long as I'm out of sight and out of mind, and I'm not causing any harm, I don't have any, you know, record that is something unseemly, in my history, which I don't have. I don't have a bunch of felonies. I don't have drug addictions. I'm not walking around surly and drunk and bothering people. And I'm not leaving messes or anything. It's totally out of sight, out of mind here. I respect the property and all that stuff. And now I'm gonna leave the property and go into town and do you know my daily things. Walk around, do what I do. All right. With that said, this is a record of how I leave the property. And when I leave for the final, I'll probably come back here and camp for a few, maybe even another week. I mean, I have to get the next 2 weeks into the gym in order to be strong enough to handle the stealth camping lifestyle. So I'm building up my conditioning, and it takes time. You got to be able to work out, and then you got to be able to recover, and it takes time. If I was just to put on a backpack at my age, and I'm not particularly athletically gifted, and I just started saying I'm planning on doing this possibly for years into my older years. So it takes a lot of practice. You got to you know chip away at this stealth camping routine in bite-sized pieces and take a lot of time off, sometimes in apartments and sometimes just parking, in a place like this, stealth camping it out for a couple of months while you go to the gym and keep a workout routine going, and then spend 3 days recovering between workouts, you know? And you got to train smarter, not harder. And you got to chip away at things in bite-sized pieces. And that requires me to be able to be somewhat stable in certain areas. And that requires me being on private property. And if it's a property or a swath of land like this, and if I'm leaving it like this and nobody uses it, it's not during hunting season, I'm not interrupting any sort of thing like that, and they don't have assets or anything, it's not a fenced in place where I'm hopping fences or nothing. What's the big deal? What harm am I causing? It's not in a community that has any sort of, um, homeless encampments or any problems with that kind of stuff. That this area has not been traumatized yet by anything like that, thank goodness. And if it was, I wouldn't be here. So yeah, I think I am definitely the exception, and I'm exceptional in how I respect the land and how I am basically out of sight, out of mind. And if there is a God, some kind of a divine, spirit source of energy, which underlines all things that appear to be just natural, which I believe that there is, then obviously this will resonate and be a protection to the household that provided this asset for me while I recovered, since I'm a spiritual being, you know? So, anyways, I know that might sound a little corny, but it's just the way I think. And, anyways, over and out for now. Good morning.